Hi there, Kamala. Welcome to the Blissful Biz podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you. So grateful that you're here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here. And I know you and I have really clicked on our online, we found each other online, and it's been so much benefit being a part of your world. And I really appreciate you having me on.
Oh, thank you. Yes, Kamala is one of the students in the Blissful Biz Academy. She graduated and she has the most amazing background, which I'm so excited to dive in and then talk about, how that really affects her business, her plans, what we can learn maybe from all your knowledge about yoga philosophy, about the Bhagavad Gita, when it comes to how we run our businesses. So why don't we start with you introducing yourself a little bit more and your story?
Thanks. Well, I'm Kamala Rose, and I am a yoga teacher, but I would probably say I'm more of a yoga philosophy educator. And I love yoga philosophy because it gives a really, I think, a very functional working understanding of the world we live in, our bodies, our minds. And I think it's very relevant to people today. So I'm passionate about educating people on this. And I'm at this stage right now of going from monastery to marketplace. And I recently left the ashram where I lived for over 30 years. And I'm I'm teaching as an independent teacher now, online and in person in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live with my two dogs, my Japanese Akitas. And I'm looking forward to meeting so many more yoga teachers and women who are looking to the yoga tradition to find meaning in the second half of their lives.
I think that's so amazing, and I think we have to dive in a little bit more into that story. What brought you to yoga philosophy and spirituality? I mean, you joined the ashram when you were really young in your 20s, right?
I did. I was 23 years old. I was a young single mother, and I was raised in a home where Indian philosophy was deeply respected. I grew up around images of Krishna, and my father was a Fulbright scholar of the Upanishads. And so we visited India when I was a child. He took me to the Ganges for my fourth birthday, and uh, I often tell the story that it was after that blessing in the Ganges that my memory turned on. And I have vivid memories of India as a little girl. And we weren't there for that long, but it imprinted itself on me. And I've always seen India as a big part of who I am, of a shaping of who I am. So later, when I came to California and I encountered the ashram, I encountered the Yoga Sutra at the same time. And in an ashram setting, there's a lot of time to unpack the meaning and sit with the meaning. And I found that to be very valuable. It really set the direction of my life. And I spent the next few decades studying and practicing and teaching within that tradition.
Is
But
it
I,
is it
yes,
quite common that other people stay there for such a long time as well?
no, No, actually, within an ashram, there's a lot of people who come and attend. It's a great place to come and learn meditation, for example, to come and do seva, to take care of others, do charity work. And um, I, being the kind of overachiever that I am, to take monastic vows. And I was a guiding teacher there for 30 years. And I gave my entire life to it. I ran charity food programs and I taught at universities. And I am very singularly dedicated to the yoga tradition. And I found that a monastic setting was the best place to express it at that intensity. But over time, the limitations kind of caught up with me. And it is a secluded environment. It is a cloistered environment. And I found that to be restrictive and limiting in a way that was no longer helpful.
So you've been in your 50s when you left the ashram to be on your own feet, so to
Yes.
say, for the first
Yeah.
time since your 20s, which I think is so impressive and so courageous. And I'm guessing it also meant like life in the ashram. There was no digital marketing. You probably had a phone, things like that. But or did it play a role already or not really? Like social media and all those things?
Well, uh, in the ashram, there was really no computers. I didn't have even basic computer literacy. And when I started thinking about becoming an independent teacher, it actually stopped me for many years, my lack of computer literacy. When I finally made the decision to establish myself as an independent teacher, it actually didn't happen. It wasn't just me. I had encountered Nishtila Joy Devi, and she and I had started talking. For your listeners, many of you probably have a copy of The Secret Power of Yoga on your bookshelves right now. And Nishtila Joy Devi is a bit of a legend. And she, we met and we started working on the Bhagavad Gita together. And it evolved into our podcast. And we're still working together. We're in the second year of the podcast now. But one of the things it really exposed was my lack of education with all things online. I did not have a social media presence. I didn't have a website. I was very shy about it too. I'm still very shy about it. So, the last year, a lot with your help, has been a big learning curve of how to be in the public online, to go from the cloistered environment in the ashram to the public marketplace of ideas that we find on the internet. And so it's been a big learning curve, and I have absolutely relied on coaches like yourself to teach me and give me the confidence to do a lot of brand new things, like setting up an Instagram account and starting a Substack, and just to get out there. And um,
I know
so
it's a lot, and I know it feels overwhelming from time to time. But if you look back over the last year, I think it's so incredible what you've accomplished. And this is really just the beginning. If you look like, I'm going to put your website in the show notes, and guys, it looks incredible. I think you have really such an eye for design and for beauty and for expressing yourself, for creativity as well. So I'm not going to promise it's going to get a lot easier over the next years. That might be misleading, but I know it's a lot, especially in 1 year. It's like a new learning a new language, moving to a new country. You're like, and you move in real life too, not a new
I
country.
did.
Yeah.
I did. It's everything is starting from scratch. And uh, being okay with uncertainty
Mm.
is something I'm coming to accept over and over again. But this is what yoga philosophy teaches us: is you don't know the way things are going to change. But what you do know is what your dharma is. And I very genuinely felt compelled in a dharmic capacity, meaning that I felt it was an essential thing that I did with my life to help yoga teachers to understand yoga philosophy and the texts better. I felt a genuine calling that I could no longer ignore. And So I really had to take up the learning of in my mid 50s for learning Instagram and Substack and how to do all of the work on online. And
I
when I
love
look
that.
at the last
Yeah.
year, it's been huge. Yes.
Yes. I love that you bring it back to your Dharma. I definitely feel like right now, it's my Dharma, what I'm doing. I guess when I started my business, it wasn't this strong a Dharma. It was more, let's make enough money so I can live in Bali. So it probably was more self-centered,
Mhm.
but also doing what I love, which was working with yoga teachers because I've just finished my yoga teacher training, etc. But I guess that, like this is always kind of those pulls. And I think some people feel bad, especially yoga teachers, that they also are ambitious and want abundance in their life, which in our modern Western world means money.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not the only thing, but it's a big part of it. So which that gives you the freedom to live your life as you want to live it, etc. So how do you manage those two poles?
Well, this is where I think a text like the Bhagavad Gita is so essential because it gives us first the framework for dharma, which is that imperative that we must do in the world. It lines us up with a cosmic harmony. There's something very meaningful about it. And it is expressed through our individual strengths, right? It's not something other than who you are. It's exactly who you are. I think what you just said about your story about kind of happening into your business and coming through the teacher training in Bali, that you're following something. You don't necessarily know what it is, but you know it's meaningful to you and it feels like the right thing to do. This this is where we understand ourselves and slowly we start to line up with a bigger purpose in life. And a text like the Bhagavad Gita helps us to understand that this is important. This is, in fact, the most important thing about the way we live our lives. And to trust those impulses that they are actually leading somewhere. The Bhagavad Gita is different than the Yoga Sutra because it asks us to be engaged in the world, to participate in the world, to bring our gifts, our skills into the world we live in, to help other people with them, to make the world a better place. And I think this is really valuable in the world we live in today.
I love it. Um, I know most of our listeners are yoga teachers, but maybe not everybody is as familiar with the Bhagavad Gita or what it is. Can you give us a little bit of background? Because the main focus of your studies, right? Or
Well, I teach both the Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutra in depth, and I think that they're both very important. I see when yoga teachers graduate or go to yoga teacher training, they have the Yoga Sutras in one hand and the Gita in the other hand. And very few graduate from teacher training having much understanding of what they're about.
I definitely didn't.
No one was ever
Yes.
taught how to read these foundational
So can you
texts.
tell us
And
more about the history of those two?
absolutely.
I don't want to say books, materials,
Text, we would just say a
text, yeah,
text.
text, yes.
Yes. The Bhagavad Gita is earlier, historically. The Bhagavad Gita was probably written around 300 BCE. The Yoga Sutra around 200 of the Common Era. It's about a 500-year difference. The Bhagavad Gita is a text on Vedanta, and it's an applied way of living in the world. Um, the Bhagavad Gita takes the traditional classical yoga teachings and shows us how to bring them into the world as the way we live and participate in society. It very famously opens with the battlefield scene with Arjuna and Krishna, where Arjuna drops his bow and melts into a puddle of inactivity. He's not able to figure out the right thing to do. I think this is a very relatable moment for most human beings. We're just not sure about what the right thing to do is. And so the Bhagavad Gita weaves together yoga philosophy and shows us how to apply this in the world. Now, the Yoga Sutra, on the other hand, was recorded later, and that's more of a renunciate path. That's about meditation and what happens on the inside of the mind in one's interior space. These two foundational texts, uh, reading them is, you don't read this like you read a regular book. You can take one word and just savor the meaning of it and look for the meaning of it. And this is how I try to approach it, is don't try to get a nice overview of what it's about, but I think the key comes into uh, a slow reading, a nuanced reading, and giving ourselves the time to digest the sophisticated ideas that they're addressing.
Yes, I think that for a lot of yoga teachers, yeah, they started maybe reading it, a translation, and were maybe a little bit put off, like, how does like those battle scenes relate to me as a woman, as a female, as a yoga teacher living in the modern world? So how do you approach that?
Well, I know it's a great question, and it's something that we spend a lot of time on our podcast unpacking. How can we make meaning out of this image? First of all, women are rarely going to find themselves on an actual battlefield this way, but we do encounter doubt about what the right thing to do is, especially at the transition points in our lives when we are weighing out what the right thing to do is for our careers and our families. And one thing has ended and something else has not yet begun. So when we take a moment like that battlefield scene and really look carefully at what's happening there and not try to necessarily see ourselves literally in the character of Arjuna, but look at the metaphor, understand what it means to us in our lives, and where our lack of, uh, where our doubt, our lack of meaning, our belonging to the meanings that held us up for so long start to falter. This is what's happening to Arjuna. He's having a hard time reconciling his family dharma, his soldier dharma. It just collapses. And women see this, how can I be loyal to my family? How can I be loyal to my students? And how can I also bring a level of respect to myself and my needs in this time while taking care of all of the people who are dependent on me? So when we can contextualize the metaphor, it can take on a great deal of meaning for us.
With the goal of a better understanding of ourselves, of our decisions, or
Of I think opening up to the answers that we already have about our dharma. I think your example is so good because women feel drawn to take this teacher training and to help people through teaching yoga, but obstacles present themselves and we find ourselves faltering. Should I do this? Should I not do this? It's so hard. Right? Just like my journey with learning everything about the computer in a year, right? We have to face these obstacles and you start to question, should I be doing this?
I
And
had
yet
that
there's some,
I had that when I started teaching yoga. I didn't do yoga teacher training to become a yoga teacher. I just really wanted to dive in deeper, have a nice time in Bali, blah blah. And then I loved it. And I started teaching my friends. So we did like living room yoga every Sunday. And I went back to Bali and started like teaching a little bit on the beach and all over Southeast Asia, but more like a traveling yoga teacher apprentice, I would say. But then came a point where it got really hard. I had like health issues. I did more teacher trainings and suddenly I had like hip problems that I never had before, like super weird. It came overnight, it went overnight.
Yes.
And at the same time, I had my little yoga travel blog and I had my background in advertising. And I realized that I was more excited about working on my website and my blog in the morning. I couldn't wait. But like preparing classes or teaching like those, I don't know, holiday guests, their first yoga class didn't feel as exciting. So I stepped away from teaching. And sometimes I wonder if I just like, I don't know, took the easy road or found my true dharma. It kind of, I mean, I've been wondering about that. I'm not really wondering about that anymore. There was
Well,
this conflict.
absolutely. Which one is the right thing to do? And I think at this point in this point of questions, we have to trust ourselves. We have to learn the resources of what does it mean to trust ourselves. And I think that a relationship with yoga philosophy is very important because it says that there is another way of seeing this. And the intuitive sense, the spiritual sense is the most important. This is Krishna's counsel to Arjuna on the battlefield as he stops and says, listen, just let's take a step back and take a look at what's going on here, right? You're seeing it this way. You're seeing all of this conflict. You're seeing these people. But on the bigger picture, what's happening here is everyone is responsible for doing the right thing. And so we have to dig a little deeper to find what the right thing is. And I think what what you said about acknowledging your love for business and how many people you've helped at this point with teaching business skills to and what that grew into out of a moment of indecision, right? There's a level of honesty, of seeing clearly, of stripping away the outer frameworks that is really essential. And I think this is the gift that yoga philosophy gives us, is it says it's okay to not know. In fact,
Mm.
not knowing could be a real gift.
Do you think it has helped you this last year that how you managed this whole transition and building your business? Or was it challenging to get back into that foundation, those knowings that you have?
Well, it was been a very challenging year, of course, but what I know for myself, and I believe this for yoga teachers, is that I come home to the philosophy. I come home to the practice, and everything is changing around me, the place I live, and looking for new work and developing online courses. But my happy place is in reading philosophy, chanting the Yoga Sutra. And so when I feel at a loss in the world and I feel conflicted about politics and conflicted about so many things, I come home to my practice and it's very grounding. And I think this is what I hope for more yoga teachers and committed practitioners is that they have the depth of the tradition available, not just asanas, not just more warrior poses, but to be able to read the sutras and especially a text like the Bhagavad Gita, it there's something very magical about it that when you open the Gita, you're going to find something that will both help you to question the way you're seeing things in the world and also help bring you home to yourself. And I think that's what the tradition gives us.
Where would you start as a new yoga teacher or experienced yoga teacher and you hadn't really been in touch with the sutras or the Bhagavad Gita yet?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of yoga teachers um, feel bit unmoored by even the basics of it. So there's a gap. I think there's a barrier and an insecurity, especially for women encountering yoga philosophy. Most of the teachers are men, and when it's taught, it's simplified in a way that I see a lot of women not able to grasp. So where I would start is with a really easy translation like Nischala Joy Devi's Secret Power of Yoga. You want to choose the simplest translation. For the Bhagavad Gita, I always recommend Stephen Mitchell's beginner translation. It's poetic, it's easy to read. You want to make it easy on yourself. And uh, with the
Why is
Bhagavad
it
Gita,
harder with a different translation? What do you mean by the translation should be a translation? I know it's always up for interpretation, but that shouldn't make it harder to read, should it?
well, some translations are much more difficult to read.
Okay.
Yes. Because it's being translated from Sanskrit and the meanings of the words have such a wide and deep meaning.
Mm.
Finding English words for that is not simple. Nishtala and we're working on a translation of the Bhagavad Gita. So I can say very firsthand that finding the right word, a word that's accessible to modern yoga practitioners, especially women, is an art. It really is an art. Um, and a lot of translations are highly academic or they're very traditional. And when modern yoga teachers open it, they just have a hard time understanding what it's saying. So, starting with the easiest translation first, giving yourself a chance to just let the text work on you a little bit, gain a simple familiarity. I always recommend to yoga teachers with to go to the section that's most relevant to you. For the Yoga Sutra, that's the part on practice. Go to the part you know. Look at the part on asana and pranayama that's in the second chapter.
So you don't have to start page one
Don't,
and then read your way through.
yeah, that can be difficult. The Bhagavad Gita, especially, starts on the battlefield. I always recommend starting in chapter 6, which is the one about meditation, about taking a seated posture, and then jumping into some of the poetry of chapter 10, for example. You want to lead with your strengths and make it easy. When we're encountering yoga philosophy, it's from another time, for many of us, another culture, and there's so much to understand about it. If we can start by making it easy, making a friend out of the text first, we'll go a lot farther.
I love that. And it makes me think about how people today interpret or read the Bible and take every word literal, which is also just a translation, like multiple translation from a break from Latin into English.
Right,
Um,
which few people remember anymore. I find that very frustrating also because people are actually harmed,
hmm,
physically harmed by that misinterpretation. And if there is one point to spiritual thought, it is kindness, love, and acceptance. And if your text is not teaching you that, then
yeah.
we need to take a different approach. The Bible's been translated, as you said, through many different languages, and to read it in English as though every word should be taken literally. I think this is also true with some of the translations we read of the Yoga Sutra can be very dense. When we start at the beginning, you read the definition of yoga as yoga chitta vritti nirodha, And people translate it as yoga is the cessation of mind stuff. You say, what does that mean? I don't understand what that means. And then how would you do it? Right? It seems very cryptic, and it can be enough to just close the book and
It's
put
then
it away.
probably with that goal of enlightenment as the goal of yoga. I always found that kind of, I don't know, not even off-putting. It's like, why should that be the goal? The journey is the goal for me.
And that's for a monastic who's living 100% of their time. The goal of enlightenment that's a valid goal. Right. To leave the world and focus exclusively on that. But I think, and now including myself and the people who live in the world, that's not the goal we're looking for. We want to help people and live a meaningful life and hope that our gifts can in some way serve a greater whole. And so this is why I believe in the Bhagavad Gita, and why Nishchala and I, have continued our podcast and our translation of the text, because there are so many keys in this that are incredibly meaningful for people today, that can really help us to find the answers to those questions. How can I best give my gifts to the world, live a meaningful life, help other people, find my meaning in my participation in the world, not in some far off goal of enlightenment, whatever that means, or in the stoppage of my mind stuff, whatever, right? How can we live a better life that is contributing to a greater whole? And I think this is the main message that the Bhagavad Gita is teaching us over and over again.
It's a big part, I feel, of yoga. And it's a great offer that you have here, helping yoga teachers, like, gain a better understanding, maybe also feeling more confident teaching yoga philosophy if they run yoga teacher trainings or want to integrate it into their classes and feel that their 200-hour yoga teacher training didn't really cover it. Like, I got my yoga teacher training. The yoga philosophy, yoga history part was that we were listening to an audiobook from Carolyn Myss. It was sad.
I think this is very common, very common.
Yeah. That also covered anatomy. It's like, what? Because it
I see
covered the
this
chakras.
so often, an in-depth course on anatomy where you know the names of all of these muscles, but it just come across with basically a recommended translation that sits on your shelves. And then I know a lot of yoga teachers that I've spoken to, they really would love to be able to share more. It's because yoga is not Pilates. It's not that kind of system of exercise. There is a deep philosophy to it, and it comes from India, and it connects to a great and vast tradition. And I know that they feel that they'd like to be able to represent that and present that type of depth to their students, but they just weren't taught how to read the texts. And so it results in a lack of confidence. And you come to class and you want to read an inspirational quote, and you open up the Yoga Sutra and it says, Hayam dukkha managatam, the pain of future suffering should be avoided. Seems, how do I translate this into my class, my vinyasa class at 5 o'clock in the afternoon? So when they try to bring philosophy into the teaching, it just isn't grounded, doesn't make any sense. And this, I think my work, I'm trying to respond to that and to give a framework to really understand what the main texts are saying so that teachers can teach from clarity instead of that uncertainty.
Can you share more about how you do that, about your signature program, Sutra to Self?
Absolutely. when I looked at my own education and at the education of the yoga teachers that I know and have encountered over the years, um, I see a few very real barriers. And the first is the language, right? The language of yoga is Sanskrit. And so many yoga teachers feel that this is a barrier and all of the dots and the lines. And so, first, I teach Sanskrit literacy. I want to teach how you can actually pronounce those words. Those dots and lines are there to help you so that you don't feel intimidated by this. I think this is, it's a big win for yoga teachers to be able to read that and feel confident in encountering the language. Second, I slow it down. Don't try to take the whole thing. We'll just take a single sutra or a single verse and do a slow, careful reading and give time to ask questions and really wrestle with it. And most of my work is really with women in particular because I feel that uh, we have our own issues with yoga philosophy, and I think it's best if we can. I have a Bhagavad Gita circle that I do every 2 weeks where I invite women to just come. It's an hour, it's free, and I really believe that just taking the time to read a verse, to see other teachers struggling with the meaning of this and modeling for each other that we don't have to know it all. We just have to be willing to engage. And the last part of what I include in my Sutra to Self course, which is where I teach the Sanskrit literacy and a slow reading of the Yoga Sutra, is I include chanting. And this is a part of the learning process that I was fortunate to receive in my training with Srivatsa Ramaswamy that he learned with Krishnamacharya. And so it's lineage based. And I found that when you chant, learn the chanting, it makes it feel very sweet, accessible, and you learn it on a different level. So uh, I feel that the difference that I'm trying to make is that I'm not teaching the philosophy as just a source of inspiration, but I want to show teachers how to work with the text and to remove the intimidation and replace it with a real familiarity so that you feel that it's your home, which is something you deserve.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's such a beautiful offer and so valuable for pretty much every yoga teacher probably to have that to really, yeah, add it to your teachings, add it to the value you offer your students.
Because it really comes through in your confidence, in your sense of being grounded. When you really understand the philosophy, you just are it. And you aren't worried about trying to bring a quote to class. You feel it in your bones. And this is what I really would love for more yoga teachers. I think they deserve it. If you're willing to spend 200, 300, 500 or more hours studying a subject, I believe that you are entitled to its depth and its tradition. But that takes time, and I want to try to bridge that gap.
It's a beautiful program. You package it up. So it's a mix of pre-recorded trainings and then calls where you go through the Jitas live, have a different topic weekly, or how does it work?
Well, that's my I do the women's Gita circle. That's every 2 weeks, and that's open. And if you're interested in that, I'd love to have anyone join us. It's a nice way to get started and just feel what it's like to be in a Zoom room with philosophy being discussed among women. I think women feel safer with just each other. They don't
Mm.
feel so exposed about not knowing what it is. And so I teach and give space for us to discuss. give some questions for reflection, and it's a really nice place to start.
Sorry, my dog is complaining about something, other dogs outside.
Always, they always have something to say, don't they? And then for anyone who enjoys that type of discussion, my Sutra to Self course has I structured it over 12 weeks, which is it seems like it's 3 months, and I provide pre-recorded lectures on Sanskrit literacy and some of the foundations of yoga philosophy that will take you, these two things will take you so far. You won't believe how much more you understand once you have the foundation. And then I take you through a nice slow reading of the Yoga Sutra, word by word, as I learned it. And I think that this is something I'd like to see as a greater part of yoga education in the future is I think every yoga teacher is entitled to a nice slow reading of the Yoga Sutra, guided by someone who understands it themselves. And this is what I created in Sutra to Self.
And we'll add the link to the show notes. I think it's amazing that you added that circle. It's a really great starting point for people. And I can just imagine that, that your students feel safe with you to open, to discuss what's going on because you have that gentle presence. Like you can listen really, and you have, of course, that knowledge, that wisdom, basically. So it feels like you really know what you're talking about. And I think this is really, this is what's going to, I know it's hard right now building a business and learning about sales and all those things, but that foundation that you have, you really packaging up your wisdom to reach more people. You decided to use your voice in a bigger way with starting that podcast. If you had no idea, um, getting out there, posting on Instagram, all the things. It's just going to step by step going to build up, but it's going to be successful because you have that what you're packaging up and you have that dharma that this is what I'm meant to do.
I'm fortunate. I've had decades to sit with this.
Mm.
And one thing that was very frustrating in the ashram is I had all this time to sit with these texts, and it does take time for wisdom like this to come to fruit and flower in your mind. And I think that ashrams are filled with people who know, but the yoga community is often functioning with a lot of uncertainty on these. So I'd like to try to offer what I know, what I've had the time to sit with. And I want to make a safe space for women to feel that they can ask the questions and not feel like their questions are stupid, because they're not stupid. You're encountering something brand new. It's not like Western thought, and it takes time.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're a new yoga teacher, you have to give it time to I think kind of mastering something, and mastering is probably even the wrong word, but we are so used to instant gratification. That's what everybody's craving. It's like thanks to social media and thanks to the internet, you always want immediate results and everything has to happen super, super fast. And at the same time, I know that a lot of my students, they struggle with perfectionism and with imposter syndrome that they feel, oh no, I just need another training to finish. I'm not ready yet. I can't talk about this because I've just been going through it myself, like perimenopause or something. And I mean, it's amazing when somebody has a background like you have, but of course, that's also very rare. Um, but it doesn't mean that what you are offering, what other people are offering is less valuable. You always bring your life experience. You always bring what you've done like in your life before you became a yoga teacher, for example, to the table. the wisdom that you have already inside you,
Yes.
and it just has to help one person.
Yes. Yes. That's such a valuable perspective. And that call to perfectionism, I think so many women have this, that we want everything to be perfect. And I think yoga is just not something that you can be, that's asking us to be perfect. It's just asking us to be open. And when we really need it is when we are feeling uncertain, right? When we're just graduating from a teacher training, we need to understand that uncertainty is, that's the nature of life, right? And to have those guiding principles. Uh, I think that yoga philosophy is very, very profound and powerful in these moments of change. And because it gives us the context to understand what's happening, not just cope with it, but to understand it. And um, it's not just about having a certification and say, right, like my certification's right here, and say, look, I know this. But to be able to have a relationship with the teachings where you can interact with them in the times that you need it. It's not just about your students, it's about you when you need them. And you'll automatically be able to share with more clarity.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories, your insights. It definitely made me very inspired to, I don't know, I can't even say dive back into yoga philosophy because I don't think I ever dove in.
Yes.
I have to
Well,
look into it.
start with chapter 10 of the Gita. It's
Okay.
poetry. It's so
Yes.
beautiful. Yeah.
I definitely do. And everybody, I'm going to share the link so you can get in touch with Kamala in the show notes. Can you share your website and your Instagram here for people who want to check you out?
Absolutely.
Next.
Thank you. I'm at kamalaroseyoga.org. That's my website. And you'll find everything about the Gita Circle and Sutra to Self there. And my Instagram is kamalarose.yoga. And I have a flower quiz too, which is fun. You might like to find what is your spiritual flower? What's your Dharma flower?
That sounds like fun. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for taking the time for being here. I loved our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. Appreciate it.